I'm pretty sure we're live. I'm waiting on confirmation, and while I wait for Rachel to let me know, I'll introduce you to Reverend Michael Carter. Thank you so much for being here, sir. Tell everybody what you do now and your accomplishments, and say hi, and we'll get started.
Well, it's my pleasure to be here. I am the minister at the Unitarian Universalist congregation here in the Swananoa Valley, which is in western North Carolina. I serve that congregation. I also teach diversity and anti-racism education. I've been recognized by President Clinton for my efforts, which I'm very proud of. And I'm also the proud father of an 11-year-old. And that keeps life full. I just turned 60 in July, and boy, did that go quickly. And yeah. I'm just enjoying my life. Oh yeah, it's a great age.
It really is.
It's a great age. Yeah. And I think, boy, I used to be 11 years old at one time.
Man, time does fly.
It does, man. But well, I'm enjoying my life.
Great. I'm glad to hear it. I know of course, we've seen you on Ancient Aliens also, and I know my viewers want me to ask you about that first, so I'm going to knock that out pretty quick. But so if you will, we also had we've interviewed a couple other guys from Ancient Aliens before, and one thing I always ask them is just, how did that happen for you? And if there's anything you want to tell us about that, go ahead.
Wow. Well, I'll tell you, it was very interesting. I was working at a hospital as a chaplain, and I get a call, and boy, I forget the producer's name. Anyway, he said that he was calling from Hollywood, California, and he said, I have a book here called Alien Scriptures, and I've read your book, and I wanted to know, would you like to be on the show? And of course I said, of course I would. And it just happened. Well, there are no coincidences, but it was just seemingly out of the blue. And I was a consultant there for a couple of seasons. It was a great experience. I was very impressed, but also pleasantly surprised, because shows like that. I also do a show called UFOs, The Hidden Evidence, on the American Heroes channel. But, maybe 20 years ago, people would have laughed that show off the screen, maybe 20, 25 years ago. But they're still going strong. I mean, they've been on for like 12 or 13 seasons, which means that there's a shift in the consciousness of people who are saying, this is not fringe, this is legit.
Definitely.
And I love that. I love that people take this seriously, because when I first started talking about this 20-some years ago, I would never talk about my own experiences. I would just talk about research, because it can cost you jobs. I had a friend tell me once, I told her about my experiences, and she said, Michael, I don't know what to make of that. I believe you, but if you want to have a career as a professional clergy person, you should never tell that story again. And here I am, 25 years later, being very public with it.
Yeah, and I've heard that from so many people, that they always were afraid to talk about it. But now it's almost common now. Everybody has their own experience, and everyone you talk to will let you know that what they've seen and stuff. So that's a good leeway. Well, first off, before I go into that question, because that's going to be a great question for you. Let me ask you this. So you have other books. Why don't we just at the start go ahead and tell people what books you've done, and we'll go ahead and drop links over into the chat so they can check them out, and hopefully you viewers out there will decide to get a couple, because they're great. But go ahead and let them know, sir.
Okay. The first book is called Alien Scriptures, Extraterrestrials in the Holy Bible. This was my master's thesis, and I just expanded it. The second book I had written is called A New World If You Can Take It: God, Extraterrestrials, and the Evolution of Human Consciousness. So both of these books deal with UFOs and religion and what that means for us as human beings. The third book I wrote, because I just didn't want to be seen as, oh, he's the UFO minister, I wrote a book called God Consciousness. It's a month-long handbook of daily spiritual practices and reflections. And they're from, don't be afraid of the word God. I'm not using it in the traditional sense of some man up in the sky. But it's a 30-day meditation manual. Last but not least, I wrote a book called The Metaphysics of Spiritual Healing and the Power of Affirmative Prayer. And it is about how our mind and our consciousness, if we can shift that, we can change our whole reality. And I wanted to talk about prayer in a way of affirming what we already have, as opposed to begging, dear God, please give me this. Dear God, please give me that. I wanted us to grow up, if you will. And so I used some techniques there that I think are well worth trying out.
You know, it's just like you said earlier. I don't know if we were on the air. We might have been, and you said that there are no coincidences. And I fully believe that. But, you know, I've actually been thinking about this for weeks now, and I haven't talked to you up to today, so that's so synchronistic in a way, because I've been examining the way that there's in the last couple of weeks there's been some trials for me and Rachel, and I've been praying on it, she has, and I was examining the way I pray, and I noticed that I do that a lot. I'll kind of ask for what I need more than being thankful for the sheer fact that I'm here and what I have, so definitely.
And you know, and don't be hard on yourself, because we've been taught this from when we were young, at least here in the West, and so sometimes it's more difficult to break an old habit than it is to learn a new one. But I mean, you know, when for instance, when you need money, right? We focus on being broke, but quantum physics tells us that what you focus on, you create. So why not focus on abundance? Why not focus on, prosperity? If you want peace in the world, you don't focus on war. You focus on being peaceful. You focus on the outcome you want to have. But we've been taught just the opposite. We focus on lack. We focus on violence. And then we just create more of it. So it's counterintuitive in some ways. Definitely. But the mind is powerful. So what you focus on, if you want peace in a relationship, you focus on how do I make that happen. You don't focus on the discord and the disharmony. That's already there.
Yes, and I've noticed that in my life. I noticed a big difference when I did start working on how I prayed. I've seen results, and it definitely wakes you up to some things when that happens.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so I mentioned before, and there's so many other things you've done.
The combination of religion and science being UFOs, because one thing, if you look at the UFO phenomenon, these beings, not all of them, but they found the balance between all this technology, whether they can travel between dimensions or time travel, or certainly they can come into your room while your doors are, I mean, they just have this technological thing very, very well in place, but they also have a deep spirituality. And that's fascinating, because here in the West, we still, it's changing, I want to be clear, but we still look at religion and science as two distant cousins who never speak to each other. But now, as we are going into the second decade of the 21st century, we see that they both complement each other. And they were very fascinated with that. So am I. And that was one of the things that we talked about, possibility of these beings being in the Old Testament, which we call the First Testament, the Second Testament, the New Testament, and the Quran. Our ancestors are talking about beings who came down from the sky, but their technology, and they're using the nomenclature, they're using the vocabulary of their day, they were godlike to our ancestors. They were like gods because they had this technology. And so I think that it's crucial that we keep that in mind. I'm not saying that angels don't have wings. So whoever's listening, because I know people say, I've seen angels. They do. But all I'm saying is, in the Bible, they're never talked about as having wings. I think our ancestors put wings on them to let us know they could fly. But they obviously, some of them look very human-like. You can't tell the difference. So I found all of this really, really fascinating. And for people who, I'm not saying there is no God. If you believe in a God, fine. If you don't believe in a God, fine. I no longer believe in a God that's a man up in the sky, calling the shots and pulling strings. I think of it more as an intelligence, as an energy. I do believe in something greater than myself. But I think that the universe is teeming with life, and that it's hubris to think that we're the crown of creation, that we're alone in the cosmos. I find that really hard to believe.
I agree with
my contention is that every place you see the word angel, if you put star person, I don't like the word alien. If you put extraterrestrial, it makes more sense. And that's what I thought about. And the book of Enoch, as you know, is a more in-depth telling of the story in Genesis 6, when the sons of God came down to the earth and they made it with women. The sons of God were extraterrestrials, and the book of Enoch goes into that even more. And Enoch was the scribe for these star people. And so I started looking at, the Exodus story. Very important story, because there's no Hebrew religion until after the Exodus. And the Hebrew slaves, these people, they escaped from Egypt. They're following something up in the sky. They call it the pillar of cloud by day and the pillar of fire by night. Now, we know in modern times, at night, sometimes these discs glow. So to the ancient ancestors, it looked like fire. And it's the pillar of cloud by day. We also know that some UFOs camouflage themselves in cloud cover, or they produce a kind of mist. And so I'm saying that our ancestors were following this. It hovered when they broke camp. It stayed above them, and in the morning, it fed them. And then in the morning, they got up, they packed up, and they followed this thing. And so it is a UFO. It's unidentified, and it's flying. When we talk about, and I'm jumping around here, when we talk about Ezekiel, okay, remember he talks about what he's at the river Shabar in the 5th century BCE, and he describes it. Well, Joseph Blumrich, who was a NASA scientist, he's dead now, engineer, he took the description of what Ezekiel talked about, and you can go online and see it, and he drew the diagram, and it was a ship. He copyrighted it. But if someone wants to go, just Google the spaceships of Ezekiel. When they talk about flying chariots, okay, I think that they're trying to say in their language that there is a machine that is flying, but they don't have the vocabulary, so they describe it as a chariot. They describe it as a pillar of cloud by day, a pillar of fire by night. I would say that in the New Testament, the Star of Bethlehem may very well have been a UFO, right? Because it's flying, they're following it, the wise men, it stops. We know stars don't shine lights down on mangers, right? A star cannot do that. A star cannot stop and start. If it did, the whole gravitational pull of the earth, you want to talk about floods and tsunamis, but a ship can. So that's where I'm going with this, and it's in all cosmologies, Native American cosmologies, China, Buddhism, obviously Hinduism, they all talk about beings who come down with teachings, with extraordinary powers, who are trying to tell the people of Earth how to live a different type of lifestyle. Spiritual healing is about changing your mind about a situation. Now, there's a difference between healing and being cured. You could have a disease, for instance, and go on and die and go on to the next level of your journey, and you can be healed. You can be at peace. You can be cured of something and walk out of the hospital, but because of negative thinking and bad attitudes, you'll be right back there in a couple of days, weeks, months, or years. And so, and when you're talking about this, when I talk about the word spiritual, I'm not talking about some mystical woo-woo where I'm levitating and, I'm talking about the cultivation of an inner life, your ethics, your morals, your inner peace. How do you develop that? So what I linked that to was prayer. And this is not new. None of this stuff. I mean, they talk about this in the Unity Church or religious science churches. But we can be transformed, like Paul said, by the renewing of our minds. So, instead of, when I pray, I don't always ask for something. I'm thankful. I affirm something. So, in other words, I may say, I thank you for this day, for this healthy body. I know that my needs will be taken care of. I know that I have a home. I have health. I have a lovely family. In other words, I'm affirming what I have. And once I appreciate what I have, more will come. More will come. Here's one of the things I've written in, they're more like affirmations. I accept my life. I am at peace, for my needs have been and always will be taken care of. I accept my past as part of my learning process. I look forward to the beautiful and the good manifesting in my life. I am never without my good, for God, however I conceive that, is always with me. It's a much more positive prayer than, dear God, I need money, please help me. Please don't let this happen to me, please, because you're focusing on what you don't want. You've got to focus on what you do want. And you can train your mind to do that. I think that's a wonderful suggestion. Yes, I do think technology has made the world a neighborhood. As Dr. King says, we want it to be a brother and sisterhood, but it is a neighborhood. And so we're connected. We always were, but now we're really connected with technology. And I think that information, when it's used correctly, can be wisdom. I'm not saying information in and of itself. So we can talk to each other more. We can exchange ideas. So I think that has a great deal to do with it. And so the spirituality of the planet is changing. I don't know how long that's going to take, but it's human evolution. It goes slow. But I think when it's used correctly, has been and will continue to be the bridge that divides us. It will help to bridge that, yes.
Definitely. Okay, so there are some...
This is the only country that continues to say they don't exist. But yet, we have top secret documents. Why do you have top secret files on something that doesn't exist? Ray Charles can see that there's something wrong with that picture.